caught to the end zone. Touchdown.
I want to win. I want to win for the Bears.
Touchdown Bears.
And I'm pushing towards excellence. Every play, every process, every snap count. I think as of right now, I think I'm rolling pretty smooth.
That's really well executed there by Caleb Williams.
I have one goal, and it's to win the Super Bowl.
Courtney Cronin is back with us. We're going to put her to work on her day job. All things Chicago Bears. What an encouraging performance by Caleb Williams in the preseason in week 2. What's the plan tonight against Kansas City?
Starters will play, to be determined for how long, but Kansas City starters are also going to play. So that means he goes against a starting defense for however long he's out there. And the big thing from Ben Johnson, pretty soon they're going to start condensing the playbook. They have been challenging Caleb Williams in ways that he has never had as a football player, to challenging playing within structure, long verbiage, a playbook that is immense, 12 different installs. Soon that gets pared down, but how do you play within the confines of this offense? Starting with getting the ball snap. There are still instances during Wednesday's practice where Caleb's breaking the huddle at 10 seconds. He tries to get to the line of scrimmage, realizes he has to kill the play. It's 2 seconds on the play clock. Can't get that off in time, delay of game. That's what they don't want to see, Hannah, because those were some of the pre-snap issues that had been occurring throughout training camp, especially early on. This late in the game, they want to see those mistakes cleaned up. They want to see a clean operation in terms of what he's doing when the ball actually is snapped, going under center, being in the shotgun, being able to deliver the ball with timing and anticipation, all the things that you saw against Buffalo carrying over one more week in the final preseason game.
Yeah, what I want to see is, how does Caleb Williams handle adversity? Last year he got sacked 68 times, and on many of those sacks you saw him on the ground, not really inspiring confidence. Sure, you can blame it on the offensive line. You can blame it on the former play callers. But what happens if you get sacked or take a couple losses or you go on a short losing streak? You can talk about winning all you want, but at the end of the day, the quarterback is the leader of the team. You need to be able to inspire confidence. And so when things go good, like you've seen in the preseason, yeah, it's all fine. But what happens when you go through a rough patch? What is your demeanor? How are you leading the guys around you? How do you get out of that time when you're not quote unquote winning? That's what I'm most excited and eager to see from Caleb Williams this season.
And that's something that Sam brings up. They've worked on specifically with Caleb Williams, body language. When Ben Johnson got settled in at Hallis Hall, not long after, he and Caleb Williams are watching back tape from last year, being like, is this what we want to be? We don't want to be a palms up team. We don't want to give up body language that looks like a defeatist mindset. And
they've seen that before, by the way.
They've seen it in games.
Jay Cutler, I just keep thinking about him on the sideline.
But the thing that Ryan Poles told me is that there aren't days in the building, even after tough practices, like we've talked about, there's been the couple steps forward, one step back. Even on those days where he has a bad practice, he's not sulking in the building. It's not an issue with him, and that's something that they've been very conscious to work on with Caleb.
Well, there's nowhere to turn. I mean, if it really begins and ends with Caleb, and they have the second hardest schedule in the NFL, so hopefully everybody will be very patient. All right, staying in the division, J.J. McCarthy will finally get on the field for the Vikings. He hasn't exactly had quality time with his top receivers, with Jordan Addison suspended for 3 games and Jalen Naylor with a hand injury. They were very happy to get Justin Jefferson back from a hamstring injury, but obviously this is the kind of injury they're going to have to continue to monitor. And as for Jefferson, he's now had 6 different quarterbacks throwing to him in his 5-year NFL career. Adding a 7th likely won't impact his production, though. He averages over 96 receiving yards per game for his career, the most in NFL history among over 3,400 pass catchers to play at least 50 games. Wow. So McCarthy's worked with 8 different receivers on the first team. Bill, what are the Vikings doing to support their young quarterback going into this season?
Well, a young quarterback's best friend outside of maybe Jameis Winston, based on the first segment, is running the football. And that is what I think the Vikings are going to lean into this year based on their offseason moves. Look at what they're telling us with their transactions. Well, they trade for Jordan Mason, who's going to help out Aaron Jones, and then they rebuild the interior of that offensive line. They sign Ryan Kelly and Will Fries away from the Colts. They use their first-round pick on Donovan Jackson. 3 new interior linemen around those excellent tackles in Christian Darrisaw and Brian O'Neill. This has been one of the most pass-happy teams in football on early downs over the last few years. Nothing wrong with that, but J.J. McCarthy's coming from an offense where, frankly, wasn't like he was Patrick Mahomes. Like, they were running the ball a lot at Michigan, and he was throwing when they needed to. So running the ball more often, not putting him in 3rd and long, that's going to be a way the Vikings make his life easier in what really is his rookie season.
I just checked in with a source in Minnesota just to gauge with all the injuries. I know we'll get into the receiver situation in a minute, but with all the injuries, how confident are you that J.J. McCarthy will be ready to execute this offense, to operate what needs to happen week 1? And I was told a 7. And for a number of different reasons, it's the short-term memory. People forget that in the game that he got injured in the preseason last year, he threw an interception, and then he finishes that game with a couple of different touchdown passes. So the short-term memory he's been able to display, whether it be in practice, going against that Brian Flores defense that he goes through every single day, turning that into a great joint practice against what's projected to be a top 10 defense with the New England Patriots last week. The pieces are in place. The verbiage is going to shrink. The playbook is going to shrink for J.J. McCarthy. But, Hannah, Lucky Jackson, Deshaun Jones, Thayer Thomas, do any of those names ring a bell?
No, that's what I'm saying.
Those are the receivers that he was throwing to this past week.
Yes.
No one has taken a snap in an NFL game. It feels like they have to sign somebody.
What about that, Jeremy?
Yes, they have to sign somebody or trade for somebody, which I expect they will do in the next 3 or 4 days as roster cuts come. Adam Thielen, he's the name that is out there. There's a potential reunion on the books. Here's what I understand about the situation. The Vikings inquired to Carolina about Thielen early in the week, and then it was sort of quiet, but it's still out there as a possibility. The Panthers are not just going to give Thielen away. This is not a roster cut situation. He's really a part of their 3 receiver sets with the young players and Bryce Young. They like Thielen a lot, so they would have to come to some sort of agreement. He's due $6+ million in salary too. They'd have to figure out the money. So Minnesota's looking at other options as well, league-wide. They're talking to a lot of teams about the potential of adding a receiver. I do expect them to add one here soon.
Yeah, I mean, what a comforting guy for a young quarterback to have.
And he knows this offense. Let's not forget. I mean, Adam Thielen is the feel-good story in Minnesota. We both covered him at separate, different stints in Minnesota, and he's worked with J.J. McCarthy. They were a part of throwing sessions. It was C.J. Ham, T.J. Hawkinson, Justin Jefferson, and Adam Thielen this offseason, so he already has that familiarity with his would-be pass catcher. And red zone threat? Wouldn't it be good to have Adam Thielen down there and on top of Justin Jefferson as well?
Absolute money in the red zone. Bill?
Yeah, the Vikings did clear out $3.7 million in cash with the Harrison Phillips trade earlier this week. So I know Jerry mentioned that over $6 million base salary. Maybe that clears out some of the money to get that done. Maybe Carolina eats part of it to get a draft pick. They have some young receivers they like in Carolina as well. So clearing out some reps for someone like maybe a Jalen Coker would make sense. So kind of everyone could benefit here. We just have to sort of see if we can get everything over the finish line.
Yeah, Thielen would be a cool full circle story. Obviously, Jeremy's going to be all over that. All right, as we're moving on to some top stories with Jeremy. Jerry Jones has been making the rounds big time with media outlets in support of his new documentary. But of course, what everybody's asking about is his star, Micah Parsons, who has asked for a trade. And Jerry has not been shy on that subject. He feels that he and Micah had a deal. Jones sat down with Stephen A. in a podcast that releases today.
There's right now about 3 entities involved in the Micah Parsons deal that really count, and that's not to dismiss everything about the organization and the Cowboys.
What are the 3 entities?
Micah, me, sitting out there, and about a mile back is that agent.
Man, he's not only insulting his player, he's insulting one of the most powerful agents in the business, David Mulligetta. What's going on with this standoff?
Well, Hannah, Micah Parsons is in a precarious spot because he wants to be traded, but quietly he's getting ready for a season. I'm told that he's essentially doing 2-a-days on his own. He's lifting and he's running. He's in all the meetings. So there are people with the building who believe that he will be ready to play week 1 and that he will play week 1. If you ask around on the player side, you don't necessarily get the same answer, that he's pretty dug in. So something has to give. They got about 10 to 12 days to figure something out. They've gotten trade inquiries from other teams. Dallas right now, I'm told, is not inclined to move on and make a trade on Micah Parsons. They want to keep him. Next, we have Brian Robinson Jr. traded to the San Francisco 49ers for a 6th-round pick. The Washington Commanders will cover a portion of his $3+ million salary, so this helps both teams. 49ers were decimated by injuries at running back behind Christian McCaffrey. They get some much-needed help. Now Washington gets to crystallize their running back room. Austin Eckler, 3rd down back. They have a young rookie, Bill Krosky-Merritt, they really like. Some other veterans will get some looks as well, and sort of a by-committee approach of running back in Washington. And you got the QBs with the Saints. Big weekend for both Spencer Rattler, who you see there, and Tyler Shuck, the rookie. My sense after asking around the league is that Rattler could have a slight edge right now, but it has been pretty close enough to where Kellen Moore wants to see more. He needed to get through this week to be able to determine who his starter is going to be. But, Shuck has had some bright moments, so he's made a little bit of a move, and things are definitely in flux in New Orleans, but they're going to have a new signal caller regardless. They're still trying to sort all that out through the weekend.
Yeah, and if they don't sort it out this season, there's always the quarterback-heavy draft coming up, which a lot of folks there are focused on. The guy who came off the couch and led them to the playoffs a couple years ago, Joe Flacco. The 40-year-old will be the starter in Cleveland. Who his backup is, though, that remains to be seen. Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders will each get reps in their final preseason game. Sanders says he's ready for anything.
I don't care. Whenever it's time for me to get out there and play, I'm going to play. Whenever it's time for the lights to come on, I'm going to do my thing. I'm not concerned about when it is. I'm not concerned about, how many reps I'm getting at this point is what it is. Because I know when the lights come on, when everything go on, when the pressure's on, you know who I am. And I'm always be that way.
Meanwhile, Kenny Pickett's still dealing with a hamstring injury. He hasn't seen any preseason action. What are you hearing about that quarterback room there in Cleveland?
Yeah, so the Browns are trying to figure out whether they're going to keep 4 quarterbacks on the roster or roster cuts looming. I know that they do not plan to trade Dillon Gabriel, that's for sure. They also don't plan to trade Shedeur Sanders. They like the rookies and what they've done so far. It looks like they want to continue to develop both. So the question is, what do they do with Kenny Pickett, who's been out most of camp? They like what he was doing before he got hurt. So they're trying to sort all this out. They are open-minded about keeping 4 in the roster, which is somewhat rare, but they've done before in Cleveland. They're going to go from there. So you'll see this weekend Joe Flacco probably playing about 20 to 25 snaps, then Dillon Gabriel, then Shedeur Sanders. Gabriel has had the edge on Sanders so far.
Yeah, even though he had a couple of turnovers in his last preseason game, Courtney.
Yeah, to Jeremy's point, there's no incentive for Cleveland to get rid of any of these quarterbacks until they absolutely have to. But that's why this weekend matters so much, and next week's practice matters so much. This quarterback 2 battle is going to go all the way up until week 1 based on what we haven't seen from these guys. There hasn't been one of these young quarterbacks go up and grab that role. Dillon Gabriel last week, some good third down throws, but then the pick 6 that he threw.
And a fumble.
Shedeur Sanders, the first preseason game against Carolina, has a great performance, and then he has the oblique injury. So all of that good momentum seems to go away just because of the time that he's missed. So for these 2 quarterbacks and the opportunity that they have, as Jeremy pointed out, Dillon Gabriel will get the snaps right behind Joe Flacco, and then it will be Shedeur Sanders. This game goes a really long way in determining the pecking order.
Yeah, we're running out of time here. Sam, what are you going to be looking at when you're assessing the 2 rookies?
I'll be looking for more of the wow throws that we saw from Shedeur Sanders earlier in the preseason. There were a couple throws that were not rookie-type throws or, hey, I'm trying to figure it out throws. Those were NFL-caliber throws. That touchdown that he had rolling out to the left in the end zone. Also, some of the one-handed catches that you saw. These are like jump-off-the-screen type of throws. That's what I'm looking for from Shedeur. From Dillon Gabriel, I'm looking for him to take away those turnovers. You're going against the 2s and the 3s, and though Dillon Gabriel looks sharp, if you're evaluating him, you're going to look at the pick 6 and look at the fumble. So if he could reduce some of those and still shine against 2s and 3s, that'll help elevate him. But for Shedeur, keep the ball clean, use your legs, and then let those throws jump off the screen like you did earlier in the preseason.
Right, trying to not have those turnovers. Courtney, it was great being with you today. Thanks to Courtney Cronin for being with us. And in case you missed it, the Colts named Daniel Jones the starter in Indy, beating out Anthony Richardson. Now, Shane Steichen gave his reasoning on the decision this week.
Look, he's our starting quarterback for the season. I don't want to have a quick leash on that. I feel confident in his abilities. I think consistency, operation, moving the ball, being consistent on a daily basis. I think Daniel Jones, has done that. I think, that year they went to the playoffs. He was 1 game away from an NFC championship game and making the right decisions. And his completion percentage, I think that keeps us on track. So that's a big part of it. Obviously, you want to see the big plays. I think Daniel Jones is capable of that as well.
So, Jeremy, is he done? Should we actually be looking for an Anthony Richardson trade out of Indy?
Well, Hannah, here's why I won't take that off the table.
Okay.
Derek Jackson, who's the agent for Anthony Richardson, is supposed to meet with the Colts